The soft glow of chandeliers illuminated the luxurious interior of the Opal Bistro, a restaurant known for its impeccable service and breathtaking views of the city. Wealthy patrons, dressed in designer clothes, chatted over expensive bottles of wine, their laughter filling the air with an air of exclusivity. It was a place where the elite gathered to unwind, and every meal felt like an event. The staff, trained to perfection, moved like silent shadows, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Among the regulars was Victoria, a woman who turned heads wherever she went. Her perfectly styled hair cascaded down her back in soft waves, and her ensemble, an elegant silk dress paired with flawless accessories, exuded wealth and class. Victoria was the epitome of high society. Her beauty, sharp features, and icy demeanor only heightened her air of superiority. She wasn't just another patron of the bistro. She was the kind of person who expected the world to revolve around her. Anything less than perfection was unacceptable. As always, she was seated at her usual table, a corner spot with a view of the city skyline. The moment she sat down, her gaze flicked toward the entrance, scanning the room for any sign of potential disturbance. Everything had to be just so. She adjusted the cuffs of her jacket and waited for her server. That server was Lily. Lily stood at the back of the restaurant, pushing a tray of water glasses toward the counter, her gaze fixed on the ground as she fought the exhaustion creeping into her bones. She had worked 2 shifts today, a long day made even longer by the heavy, tipsy sighs of guests she served earlier. But she kept moving, as always, determined to make it through another day. She was a college student trying to scrape together enough money to pay for textbooks, tuition, and the basics. Plain and unassuming, Lily didn't stand out like some of the other girls who worked at the bistro. She wore a simple black dress, her hair pulled back into a tidy ponytail. She wasn't given the luxury of feeling beautiful or important. But that was okay with Lily. She was used to being overlooked. As Lily approached Victoria's table, the woman's sharp eyes locked onto her with the precision of a hawk hunting its prey. Her lips curled into a sneer, and her eyes flickered over Lily, studying her as if she were a piece of dirt beneath her designer heels. "Well," Victoria's voice dripped with condescension. "Finally." She looked Lily up and down with a dismissive glance. "I've been waiting far too long for someone like you. Is this really who you choose to send out here? You're so plain." Lily froze. She had been trained to keep her composure, no matter what, but Victoria's words struck like a slap. She didn't expect kindness from the high-end clientele, but this was different. The cruelty in Victoria's voice was sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Lily replied softly, her voice steady. She set the menu down in front of Victoria, trying her best to mask the hurt swelling inside her. "How may I help you today?" Victoria scoffed, her tone dripping with disdain. "How could anyone expect someone so unattractive to wait on people like me?" She glanced around, her lips curling further. "This place is for the elite. You, dear, don't belong here. You shouldn't even be working in a place like this." The words hit Lily with the force of a thunderclap, but she stood tall, her heart pounding. She wanted to say something, to fire back with a biting remark. But she couldn't. Not here. Not now. Instead, she forced a smile, the kind of smile she'd perfected over the years of serving difficult customers, and nodded. "I'll get your order right away, ma'am." She turned and walked away, the weight of Victoria's insult heavy on her shoulders. As she passed through the restaurant, she kept her head down, trying to push the sting of the words away. She had heard worse before, but today, for some reason, they felt different. They burrowed into her heart, sharp and cold. She wasn't sure why they hurt so much. Maybe it was because they came from someone who thought they were better than her. Or maybe it was just because, deep down, she had always believed that she wasn't good enough. But no matter how much the words stung, Lily couldn't afford to let them show. So she focused on the task at hand, taking orders and serving drinks. All while the image of Victoria's smug face replayed over and over in her mind. Lily moved through the rest of her shift with a quiet, steadfast determination. Every step she took felt heavier than the last, but she refused to let Victoria's words consume her. As she served plate after plate, poured glass after glass, she forced a smile on her face, doing her job as perfectly as she could. The pain from Victoria's insults still lingered, a dull ache in her chest. But Lily kept it buried beneath her professional exterior. The night passed slowly. As she cleared the last few tables, her mind kept drifting back to the moment at Victoria's table. She had been called ugly. She had been told she didn't belong. The words were cruel, but they were nothing new. For as long as Lily could remember, she had always felt invisible, whether it was in school, in the workplace, or at social gatherings. People saw her as ordinary, overlooked, and unremarkable. That's what she had always believed about herself. But tonight, something inside her shifted. There was a spark of defiance she had never recognized before. She wasn't just a waitress, and she wasn't just the ugly girl who didn't fit into the world Victoria and others like her inhabited. Lily had a heart that was resilient, a spirit that refused to be crushed. And for the first time, Lily realized that her worth wasn't tied to what others thought of her. She had more to offer than what met the eye. Later that evening, as she stepped into her tiny apartment, exhausted and ready to collapse into bed, she was greeted by a message on her phone. It was from her friend Sarah. "Hey Lily, I know you've been thinking about it for a while, and I think you should do it. The beauty pageant is next month, and I think you'd be perfect. Don't let what happened today stop you. You're worth so much more." Lily stared at the message, her heart pounding. A beauty pageant. She had thought about it before, but had always brushed it aside, telling herself she wasn't the type of girl who belonged in that world. But Sarah's words echoed in her mind, urging her to take the chance. Maybe it was time to prove to herself that she could be more than just the girl everyone overlooked. She hesitated for only a moment before typing back, her fingers trembling slightly. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll sign up." As she pressed send, a sense of nervous excitement bubbled up inside her. The pageant wasn't just about beauty, it was about confidence, strength, and self-belief. Lily wasn't sure if she was ready, but for the first time in a long while, she knew she had to try. For herself. The audience now waited in suspense. Would Lily overcome her self-doubt and rise above the challenges ahead? Would this pageant be the turning point she so desperately needed? Only time would tell. The day of the beauty pageant arrived, and Lily's nerves were on edge. She had spent the past few weeks preparing, attending rehearsals, practicing her walk, and learning how to speak confidently in front of an audience. But as she stood backstage, dressed in an elegant gown she had managed to afford by scraping together all her savings, the nerves crept back in. Surrounded by contestants who seemed effortlessly glamorous, flawless skin, perfectly styled hair, designer dresses, Lily couldn't help but feel out of place. She was just the plain girl from the bistro, someone who had never been celebrated for her looks or her grace. But she wasn't going to let that stop her. Not today. As the pageant began, Lily took a deep breath and walked onto the stage, her heart racing in her chest. The spotlight hit her, momentarily blinding her as she faced the audience, but she held her head high. She had promised herself she would do this for no one but herself, to prove that she was more than the labels others put on her. Some of the contestants gave her polite nods, while others eyed her with thinly veiled contempt. Lily didn't let it faze her. She had been judged her whole life, by classmates, by customers, by society, and she had learned not to care what others thought. It was her time to shine, and nothing was going to stop her. In the audience, Victoria sat, perfectly poised in her seat, surrounded by a group of her wealthy friends. She sipped her champagne and chatted effortlessly, her eyes scanning the contestants with a detached interest. She had attended many pageants before, always as a spectator, always confident that the women on stage would pale in comparison to her beauty. "Look at her," Victoria said, her voice dripping with judgment as she pointed toward a contestant walking down the runway. "She'll never win. She doesn't have the right look. So predictable." Victoria's friends nodded in agreement, casting glances at the women strutting on stage. When Lily stepped forward, Victoria's lips curled into a sneer. The girl who served her at the restaurant? She didn't belong here. She was far too plain, far too ordinary to be competing with women like these. As the night went on, the contestants performed their routines, answered questions, and tried to impress the judges. Lily felt her nerves start to settle. With each round, she realized that it wasn't just her appearance that mattered. It was her heart, her confidence, her ability to stand tall in a room full of women who were often praised for things she had never been. Finally, the moment arrived. The judges gathered backstage, reviewing their scores, while the audience waited in eager anticipation. The announcer stepped forward, holding the envelope with the winner's name. Third place goes to Samantha Harris. The crowd applauded as the first runner-up took her place on stage. Second place goes to Chloe Mitchell. Another round of applause followed. Lily stood in the wings, her heart pounding, her hands trembling. She tried not to let the fear take over, but as she gazed out at the sea of faces, the weight of the moment pressed down on her. Then, the announcer's voice rang out again. And the winner of this year's Beauty Queen pageant is Lily Thompson. A shocked silence followed before the audience erupted into applause. Lily stood frozen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The lights seemed to blur around her, and her legs almost gave way beneath her. She had won. The moment felt surreal. She walked forward slowly, her steps unsure at first, until the applause grew louder and she found her footing. As she reached the center stage, she took a deep breath and looked out at the audience, her chest swelling with pride. She wasn't just a waitress. She wasn't just the ugly girl Victoria had mocked. She was someone who had earned this, someone who had fought against all the odds. From the back of the room, Victoria sat stunned, her mouth slightly agape. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. There was Lily, standing tall, a crown on her head, her face glowing with confidence. Victoria had never been one to doubt her own sense of superiority, but seeing Lily take the crown made her question everything she had believed about beauty, about worth, and about people like Lily. Her friends whispered among themselves, their expressions a mixture of surprise and disbelief. How did she? She doesn't even look like the others. She's nothing like the women who usually win. Victoria could only watch in stunned silence, her thoughts swirling. The woman she had dismissed so easily, the one she had so casually labeled ugly, was now the center of attention. The world had proven her wrong, and for the first time, she found herself confronting a truth she had long ignored. Beauty was far more than skin deep. As Lily stood at the front of the stage, her smile widening as the crown was placed upon her head, the crowd cheered. But it was Victoria who felt a deep, uncomfortable shift within herself, one that would make her question everything she had once known about judgment and about her own perceptions of beauty. After the pageant ended, Lily was swarmed by reporters and photographers. Cameras flashed as they clamored for interviews, eager to get a glimpse of the newly crowned queen. She tried to stay composed, answering their questions with a grace she hadn't known she was capable of. It was everything she had dreamed of, a moment of validation, a moment where she could finally stand in the spotlight, confident and proud of who she was. But in the crowd, Victoria watched from a distance. She hadn't moved from her seat, still stunned by the unexpected turn of events. Her mind raced as she tried to process what had just happened. The woman she had so easily belittled just hours ago was now the center of attention, celebrated as something she had never expected. The applause, the admiration, it all felt like a personal blow to Victoria's carefully constructed world. Her once unshakable confidence seemed suddenly fragile. Her friends had already moved on, chatting excitedly about other aspects of the pageant, but Victoria was lost in thought, her face a mask of confusion and regret. She wasn't sure what exactly was eating at her, but she knew that this wasn't how she had expected the evening to go. She had always prided herself on knowing what made someone truly beautiful, and yet, Lily, the quiet, unassuming waitress, had just proven her entirely wrong. As the crowd began to thin out, Victoria couldn't help herself. She stood up and walked toward Lily, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. Lily was still surrounded by reporters, but Victoria waited, her breath shallow, until there was a quiet moment. "Lily," Victoria said, her voice hesitant. She wanted to sound confident, like she always did, but it came out more fragile than she had intended. I wanted to say congratulations," she smiled thinly, but there was no real warmth behind it. "I didn't expect that. You really surprised me." Lily turned to face her, her smile still radiant from her victory, but her eyes were steady, unwavering. She had been prepared for this moment, had known that someone like Victoria, who had once humiliated her, would come to speak with her. But she wasn't going to let her guard down. Not now. Thank you, Lily said, her voice calm but firm. But I think you owe me more than just a congratulations. Her words hung in the air, sharp and clear. Victoria blinked, taken aback by the bluntness of Lily's response. She opened her mouth to speak but faltered, unsure of how to react. What do you mean? She asked, her tone defensive. Lily's expression didn't change. She stood tall, looking at Victoria, her posture proud and dignified. You called me ugly, remember? She said softly, but her words carried weight. You told me I didn't belong here. You said I wasn't good enough. Victoria's face flushed, the sting of guilt creeping up on her. She had hoped that the distance of the pageant, the glamour of the event, would make this moment easier to forget. But now, standing before Lily, she couldn't escape the reality of her words. I didn't mean it like that, Victoria stammered, trying to deflect. I was just... You were just judging me, Lily interrupted, her tone soft but unwavering, and it hurt a lot. Victoria's mouth closed, the realization dawning on her. She wanted to apologize, to take back everything she had said, but her pride fought against her. She had never been one to admit she was wrong. Yet there was something in Lily's eyes, something raw and real, that made her hesitate. For the first time in a long while, Victoria didn't feel superior. She felt small, unsure of herself. Lily took a step closer, her voice steady as she continued. But you know what? I didn't let your words define me. Not then, and not now. I've always known my worth. I didn't need your approval to prove who I am. You don't have to believe in me. But I do. She looked Victoria in the eye, her gaze unwavering. And that's all I've ever needed. For a moment, Victoria stood there, speechless. The weight of Lily's words settled over her, pressing into her chest, and she found herself unable to respond. She had expected Lily to be angry, to lash out at her. But instead, she was met with strength, with grace. Something Victoria hadn't expected from the ugly waitress. Lily's words were the truth. She had used Victoria's cruelty as fuel, turning the hurt into the very thing that had driven her to stand tall on that stage. And now, in this moment, as she stood before Victoria, it felt like the final act of her triumph. Victoria swallowed hard, a feeling of shame washing over her. She wanted to speak, to apologize, but something stopped her. She realized, with a quiet, uncomfortable certainty, that Lily didn't need her apology. Lily had already risen above it, and in that silence, Lily's victory was complete. She had not only won the crown, but she had also proven without a doubt that no one, not even someone like Victoria, could take away her self-worth. As the last of the reporters drifted away, leaving Lily to catch her breath, she turned to leave the stage. The crown felt heavy on her head, but in a way, it symbolized something much greater than just winning a beauty contest. As she walked past the crowd, she caught sight of Victoria once more, still standing off to the side, her gaze following Lily with a mix of awe and regret. Just as Lily reached the exit, something made her stop. Without looking back at Victoria, she spoke quietly, but her voice carried the weight of her journey. You know, she began, this pageant wasn't just about beauty, it was about confidence. It was about resilience. It's about the story behind the person, the struggles, the strength, and the willingness to rise up despite everything. The kind of beauty that doesn't just shine on the outside, but comes from within. Victoria remained silent, her breath caught in her throat. For a brief moment, she was lost in thought, unsure of what to say. She had been so focused on outward appearances, on perfection, that she had failed to see what Lily had embodied all along. Lily paused, giving one last glance over her shoulder. You've got to learn that true beauty isn't something you see with your eyes, it's something you feel in your heart. Don't forget that. With that, she stepped into the world beyond the pageant, her confidence fully realized. As the doors closed behind her, the light from the venue seemed to fade into the horizon, symbolizing the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Lily was no longer the ugly waitress. She was a woman who had conquered her doubts, risen above judgment, and proved that beauty was something no one could ever take from her. As Victoria stood there, her mind swirling with the realization of her own shortcomings, she couldn't help but feel the shift within herself. This encounter, this lesson, had ignited something in her, a desire to grow, to look beyond the surface, and to see the real beauty in others. She had witnessed Lily's transformation, and it would change her too. And as the evening came to a close, Victoria began her own journey, one that would take her down a path of self-reflection and understanding. The world was larger than she had ever realized, and for the first time, she saw beauty in places she had never thought to look before. The story ended with Lily walking into the future, her head held high, knowing that she was more than enough, beautiful, strong, and capable of achieving anything she set her heart on. Thank you so much for watching this powerful story of self-discovery, resilience, and the true meaning of beauty. Lily's journey reminds us all that our worth is not defined by others' judgments and that confidence and strength come from within. We hope this story inspired you to see the beauty in yourself and in those around you. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting tales that will move you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your comments below. And if you know someone who could use a little inspiration today, be sure to share this video with them. Thanks for being part of this community. Until next time, stay strong, stay beautiful, and never let anyone define your worth.